tush.
I know between the three of you, you've done practically everything, right?
Yes, everything ever made.
This is the entire anime industry now.
We created Japan and all of these studios, so you're welcome.
So we'll start off super easy, and we'll start with you, Justin.
All right.
What's the question you get most at conventions?
Oh, goodness. A lot of folks like to ask about favorites, which is a tough one for me to do, like favorite character to voice. I tend to answer in the way that our jobs are kind of to find the humanity for these characters, and in doing so, I tend to attach a little bit of me to them, and by, I guess, transfer, they've attached a little bit to me. You can't pick your favorite kid, you know?
I say the same thing. I'm like, it's like choosing a child.
Yeah. Plus, if I pick one, the other ones all start yelling at me. It's like, head, that's horrible. So.
What about you, Con?
The thing I get asked most?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was it like working on so-and-so? And what it's like working on anything when you're someone who loves what you do for a living is awesome. So I have been very blessed in 23 years of being in the industry to work with fantastic directors, fantastic fellow actors, working on exciting projects. Sometimes not all the projects are all that great, but we're happy to be employed. And it means the world. So the real icing on the cake is coming out here, meeting fans like yourselves, getting to travel and see new places and all that. So what is it like working on anything, Dragon Ball, any of the other things we've been blessed to do through the years? It's awesome, and I can't recommend it enough. It's the coolest feeling.
So next question, Dragon Ball specific. How do you keep it all straight? There's 30 million versions and a million videos and movies, and how do you keep it straight?
Like, how do we keep which part of it?
All your characters and roles, and which ones was I in, and which one was I wasn't. And is there anything about Dragon Ball specifically that you're like, gosh, I wish I could have been part of that arc or that movie specifically?
I don't know, there's so much that happens. Like, it's so crazy. I mean, I think that's the gift of a show that's been running for so long, is that even if you didn't get to be a part of something a long time ago, like, there's probably something cool coming, or that you're already involved in. And I think what's so special about Dragon Ball is that few shows have movies and a long-running anime and video games, and so it's like it's the and it's there are very few projects where we get to play these characters in so many different forms, like with the video games and because even like One Piece, for example, which is probably the longest running anime of all time and will probably never be beaten. There are video games, but I don't know if we ever got to dub any of them. But with Dragon Ball, I think we've been able to dub all of them. Is that accurate? But it is the gift that keeps on giving, and it's so cool to be able to just keep on keeping on with these characters. It's really, really fun.
And we keep bringing in new characters, right? Just even with the last film, we were introduced to the Gammas and Dr. Hedo, and so bringing in new cast members. It's pretty exciting. It's like the family that just kind of keeps bringing more folks into it.
Yeah, and the manga, introduces even more, so hopefully we'll see that. People do often ask, when's more Super? So we don't know. We were all blindsided when they said, Budokai Tenkaichi 4. Like, oh, really? Okay, all right, well, guess we're doing this. But, we're all waiting.
I know a big part of this convention is fans getting to see you, you getting to see fans. Was there anyone that you worked with personally that you were starstruck by? That you got the belly butterflies?
Oh gosh.
The Vedas. I haven't had a chance to say hello to Emily Swallow yet.
I was sitting next to her on the plane,
Aww.
and I didn't realize it, and then we got picked up together, like at the hotel, or not at the airport. And I was like, oh, hi, we were sitting next to each other for that entire flight. We just didn't talk, we were like in our own little world, and then...
Did you say, which way do we go? And she goes, this is the way.
No, but
See
she
what I did
was
there?
telling me about all that, and it was really, really fun. But she's very nice, you should go meet her.
I'm looking forward to it, because I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. I love her character, and The Mandalorian, and all that stuff, so yeah. I do geek out. I've met a lot of people that worked on Mandalorian, whether they're Katie O'Brien, who was on this season, some people that do mocap or stunt doubles for different characters. It's really, really neat to get to hear different perspectives, different experiences. It's like, you guys don't get enough respect. It's like, you see the big name and you see them and then they put the helmet on and it's like, well, you know, that's not Pedro Pascal 90% of the time. It's one of 3 people, apparently.
No, it is cool being at these conventions, especially like the really, really big Comic-Cons and just getting to share space with like film and TV people.
Yeah.
And it's wild and it's so funny, like, I know a lot of times I'll have people come up to my table that are nervous and I always tell them, I'm like, you should see me when I try to meet a film and TV person, like I'm nervous too, I get it. But yeah, and I've chickened out of so many opportunities to get to meet people because I just suddenly get this like spontaneous shyness, but it is cool just being like, oh, there are the hobbits at that table right there. There's Elijah Wood and you know, Sean Astin and like all these people and or there's Jason Isaacs or there's, you know, like, wow, this is so surreal. But yeah, that part's really cool.
Yeah, like we could go to the green room or somewhere and we have guest badges, so it's like I feel redundant going, hi, I'm a fellow guest.
Yeah.
Well, duh. Like, I'm one of the VO people. I do voices, you do things.
You're known for your face.
Your face.
So you mentioned Star Wars. What are you guys watching right now that you're really into? Is it Mandalorian? Is it, you know, Clone Wars? We like Clone Wars. Is it anything else? Ted Lasso?
Oh yeah, I'm on the last season of Ted Lasso. Still have a few episodes to go. My wife's ahead of me. She says, "Oh my God, you're gonna cry! It's good happy tears." It's like, oh, okay. Looking forward to it. New season of Black Mirror. I'm anxious to get it because that show is just mind-boggling. Yeah, I actually started Clone Wars because I haven't been really interested to see it until they started putting Easter eggs in The Mandalorian and Obi-Wan and all these Andor and all the other shows. It's like, I want to see how that all ties in. So, how about you guys?
Oh, let's see, I'm kind of in between shows as I patiently await the second half of season 5 of Yellowstone. But I have been going back and watching Treme, which is just absolutely blowing my mind. It's all about New Orleans right after Katrina. And it's just fantastic performances by specifically a lot of New Orleans natives. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I'm terrible at keeping up with television shows. Because like my life is so busy and my schedule's so chaotic, it's kind of like, you know, reading a book and then having to walk away from it for a while and then you like forget, okay, where were we in this adventure? Like what's going on? So I'm usually terrible about keeping up with series, but I'm like a documentary nut. I watch like short docu-series or documentaries. Yeah, so like that's, if I'm not watching movies, I'm watching documentaries.
True crime?
True crime, yes. And also just like interesting documentaries about like really interesting, unique, kind of weird people that maybe we've never heard of before. Like I just watched one on the plane about this like Polish artist that was like a megalomaniac and he like lost a lot of his art in the Blitz. And it's just, he's just this he died in the early 80s, but it's like, he's just this like really enigmatic, fascinating person. And I'm like, I never would have heard of this person if not for this documentary.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love stuff like that. But I need to jump into, I have all these like series I haven't finished. Like I never finished Game of Thrones. I never finished, you know, I tried to jump into some of the really major series like that. I need to start The Mandalorian. I'm so behind.
Where did you stop watching Game of Thrones?
I don't want to tell you, because everyone in this room is going to judge me. I think it was like the end of season 2. So, but I know like all the major spoilers and, you know, yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't think I finished it either. Confession time. I got to the last season and I was like, it's so dark, I can't see anything, and I don't want to watch it anymore. I don't want it to end, you know?
Yeah.
So I'd love to open it up. If you guys have any questions, please go ahead. You can either raise your hand and we'll see if we can find a microphone for you. You can shout. Either way, this is about you guys asking your questions. I know you raised your hand. Would you like to ask one?
Yes, we all know Dragon Ball is very taxing on the voice.
Yeah.
So what is the hardest line scene, anything you've had to record in Dragon Ball?
Super Boo's death, when he blew up, when they went inside of him, and when he has this huge yell, and so like I threw a 100% of a yell to this thing, and then it drops even more, and I'm like, oh well, I didn't know I had to go to 15 or whatever. So that was taxing.
Anytime Kid Trunks or Gotenks go Super Saiyan, because it's that weird like kind of voice, but it's like held out and screamed for like, you know, the 15, 20 seconds that it takes them to go Super Saiyan. So anytime that happens, I'm like, say a prayer.
Yeah, it's not ever actual lines of dialogue, it's just extended screams.
Yes.
You know, when you do the power-up yells and all that, I was kind of worried that when we were doing Kai and Gohan go Super Saiyan 2 in the Otherworld tournament that I wouldn't be able to do it, but I got it in 2 takes.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I'm a little lightheaded, but it's worth it.
You always dread hearing the director go, it's not quite long enough, can you do it again?
Yeah, it's like it'll sound robotic if we stretch it in the computer program, so it's like,
No.
do it again.
So follow up to that, which line, which scene did you have to do the most takes for?
Ooh.
Which one was you have the difficult to do and then the just quite couldn't get it right many, many times?
I don't know, but I can say that when you're placed into a position to direct yourself, those tend to be the times that you do yourself in, right? You're like, no, let's do it again, no, do it again, no, do it again. And so that can do it. But most of the voice directors, especially for shows like Dragon Ball or other big shows like that, like to Alexis's point, there's a lot of empathy going on. So,
Yeah, there's a technical aspect to this too, because we're matching lip flaps, but sometimes the internal sync can be weird given what we have to say in English versus how the mouth is moving. Sometimes we cheat words to get them to flow and fit that exact timing and other than that. And that, I can't remember a specific instance, but that happens true across whatever anime we're working on.
Well, and the Dragon Ball, the series, not the video games, has a kind of a unique thing going on too, where a lot of times we have to record alternate dialogue for like the Y7 version. And so it's like maybe we'll have to do, okay, so maybe that line wasn't fitting, and then we have to do that a couple of times as is, and now we gotta go back and do it again because, you know, the Y7 version we can't say but or stupid or, you know, things like that. So then we have to figure out like a more child-friendly way of saying that line, and then that adds additional takes. But yeah, to the empathy point, I think a lot of times, because the same people have been directing the show for so long, and they know everybody's limitations and everything like that. You know, there's a lot of like, okay, I'm going to give you too much information so that the chances of you having to do this line again are like as small as possible. So I think that, like, I don't think there's ever been an instance where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm just not getting it. Like, because normally we go in and it's like, okay, let's do this. I know what I'm supposed to do. We're working together. So yeah.
So are there characters or scenes where they let you be kind of relaxed, kind of ad-lib, do what you want, freestyle a little? Or is it kind of more that, like, you know, as close as you can?
that may happen like in group cues, right? So like if there's 14, 15 characters talking at the same time, there's probably a little bit more leeway with a little bit of that, but most of that's getting mixed down pretty low. One of the things that we have to be very aware of is that we're telling a story in a different language, but it's a story that's already been told before. And so to stay true to that is, it's very important to us as it is, I think to everybody else. So there's not a lot of the ad-libbing that gets to happen. Another thing too is if you get too in your head on trying to like, oh, the read should be this way. The reason why we don't get to look at scripts before we're in studio is because it's harder sometimes to get an actor out of a read than it is just to get them into one.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions? Right up front.
So does your experience doing voiceover help kind of train you to do like other positions like directing, script writing, sound mixing, editing, etc.?
I can't speak to, I'm sure, me speaking just as someone who also directs, like absolutely. I feel like, I can't speak to the more like technical stuff, but I know that doing all those different things, like you're looking at flaps regardless of which one of those hats you're wearing, and I feel that one makes you, like they all just make you better at reading flaps. So like, acting makes you a better director because then not only can you better communicate with an actor because you are an actor yourself, but you have to look at the flaps even more closely than you would as an actor because as the director, you're the one signing off on that. And as an engineer, you're having to look at flaps really closely because you're the one putting them in the flap, putting the words in the flaps, and all that other stuff. Maybe The only exception is mixing, because they're more concerned about the elements in the background as opposed to what the characters are saying. And they're listening to the levels of the voice as opposed to what is actually being said. But yeah, I definitely think that when I started directing, I felt like I already had a really good grasp of flaps and the technical side of voice acting, but I do feel like when I started directing, it made me even better. And it also just gave me a greater appreciation for what the pre and post-production team go through. And yeah, I would say it scratches a different part of my brain too, which is awesome.
Any other questions? Right up here.
For directing, is there anyone that you really loved working with?
God, well, selfishly, I do take, it's not that I only hire people I know personally, but I do hire people that I know are going to make my life easy. And even if that's somebody that I've never met, I will ask around about them. So I have had very, very, very few experiences where I was like, ooh, I don't know if this is working. And that is by design. Like I want to work with people who are not only right for the role, but who make the entire project a delight, because it's high stress. Like we all love what we're doing, but especially with simul-dub deadlines and things like that, it's stressful. It can be stressful, but so you want to surround yourself with people that do good work and are pleasant to work with. And so I can say with full confidence that I really enjoy 99.9% of the people I've worked with. It's been great. You both have too.
Absolutely
Yeah.
agree. I mean, yeah, I can't think of anybody that I don't like working with. Again, to Kyle's point, we're getting to kind of do something we want to do. And so that changes the word work a little bit, right? Changes the definition.
Well, and there's a difference, because I know a lot of like LA studios, they have a separate casting director, but in most, if not all of the studios in Dallas, the director is the casting director as well. So it's not someone telling you who you have to work with, it's you choosing who you get to work with based off of whatever your personal criteria is. And yeah, there are like producers and other people that will do like the official sign off and be like, yes, your choices look fine, or for whatever reason, we can't use this person, who else do you have? Or maybe they're not able to work that season, or whatever it is. But yeah, so there is a lot of choice, so it can be like, okay, these people are great, and I also have heard really great things about them. This is gonna be a great season. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can only speak to directing on the mobile video game side of things. I work on a mobile game called Mobile Legends Bang Bang, which is out of China. And it's been out for a few years, and I don't cast, but I do direct, and a lot of the talent, some of them come in to the studio and others are over Zoom. And the clients are on Zoom in Shanghai, and only one or two of them can actually speak English, so there's the language barrier thing. But yeah, it's been really, really cool to get to have a chance to be on the other side of the mic, or the booth, the window, I guess, and call the shots. And the clients have been very, very gracious in saying that we love that you come with such a long background of acting, that you're able to communicate to other actors in a way that we can't. And we really like that. It's like, that's cool. Thank you for having faith in me and giving me that opportunity to do. I haven't gotten to do anime dubs yet, but I hope to eventually.
Yeah, it's always nice when, like, as an actor, if you're about to work with a director on a video game, anime, whatever, that you've never worked with before, and you're kind of asking around to sort of get a feel for, how's this gonna go? I don't know this person, like, what's their style like? And the best thing you can hear from another actor is, oh, you'll love that person, they're an actor's director. Which means that, like, they have acting experience and know how to talk to you to get, like, the best performance out of you. So you are an actor's director.
That's right. There are some in there that have it in their brain, like, have a certain read, do it like this. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll give that to you, but it's not as creatively satisfying as, something that it's organic. It's like, let me give you my interpretation of it. Hopefully, I'm able to give that to you.
So with the director hat on, is there anyone that you want to work with? Like, you're like, I'm just waiting for the right project to work with this person. You don't have to say names if you don't want to.
No, I'm not currently directing, so I haven't thought about it in a minute, but I do know that, like, the most recent example of, like, somebody that I really wanted to work with, that I finally got to work with, was Patrick Seitz. He was in Dallas, that's when I first met him, and then he's been out in LA for a while now.
Oh, yeah.
But he not only, Patrick Seitz is like, oh gosh, Frankie in One Piece, and like he's done a bunch of other stuff, big booming voice, he's like the biggest teddy bear you'll ever meet, he's such a nice man, so talented, does a lot of directing and writing himself, and it was one of those things where it was like, so many of the shows I directed were like, you can't sound like a 16-year-old girl, I don't have a place for you, you know, it was like they were so girl heavy. And I credit Patrick Seitz with getting my career in LA started because he put my name in a hat to an LA casting director out there many years ago, and it worked out, and I'm so grateful to him. And so it's a combination of like, I love you as a person, you're fantastically talented, and also you have done a lot for me, and I want to give back. But I'm sorry, you just can't sound like a 16-year-old girl, I'm so sorry. But so I finally, during the pandemic, was directing a show called Sunny Boy, and I had like the perfect role for him, and I was like, Patrick, please read for this, like I need you to read for this, and he read for it, and it was fantastic, and I got approval to cast him, and it was just like the best thing ever, and I was so happy. He was so perfect for that part.
So I want to open the floor again. I know a bunch of people have walked in. Any questions? Right up front here.
Can you tell us your favorite lines that you've said in Dragon Ball Z? For any character, it doesn't matter. You can pick any.
Well, I'll tell you, one of them is definitely next time on Dragon Ball Z. Apply that to anything.
Do you hear that one in your sleep?
Oh, all the time. Because you can apply it to anyone's life.
It's like, when he goes to sleep, that's what it starts that. That's the beginning of every dream. Previously.
I don't remember the exact line. It's not in Dragon Ball Z, but it was in Dragon Ball Super, and it's early on in the show when it's kind of a filler episode, but it's really fun, and it's when Trunks and Goten are trying to find a birthday gift for Videl, and it's just this episode of ridiculous hijinks. There's no enemy, there's no bad guy, there's no drama. It's just Goten and Trunks like being little kids that don't understand things. And they're trying to figure out what to get Videl, and it just becomes this like game of telephone because they don't understand the things that people are recommending. So one of them is like, oh, you should get her perfume, like eau de toilette, and they're like, oh, let's get her like some eau de toilette. And then it's like, you can take her to like the hot springs. Get her like a coupon to go to the hot springs. It's like, oh, and then it's good for your old lady bones, and you should go there. And he says something like, oh, we can take Videl to the hot spring, and she can get like in the warm water for her broke down old lady butt. And they tell Videl, it's like, we got you this like toilet water, and then you can go to the hot springs, and you can like work on your old lady butt. And she's like, what? It's like, I don't know, it's just this like, I don't even know what you call that, comedy of errors. It's like, oh, they tried. And what's even funnier is that Kara Edwards voices Goten and Videl. So in that scene, she's like basically talking to herself.
That's right.
Those are my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
The whole franchise, so, for sure. I don't know that there was a line that was like that I could say was, you said like a favorite, but all of Raditz pontification there at the beginning of the franchise when he kind of explains the history of the Saiyans and all that. That was pretty fun stuff to do reads for. Yeah.
Does anyone else have a question? Yes, go ahead.
For Super Moves, was there any that you can think of what your favorite lines were in?
Oh, hey, there's one I might have said to you called you Hot Shot, I think. I can't remember the lines exactly, but do you remember it?
Yeah, it was, walks up to him, like all cool with it, and then Gohan just says, no, then you say, hot shot, you want to fight Majin Buu.
Hot Shot, you want to fight Majin Buu? Fight you? No, I want to kill you.
It's like I was in the scene. Gives you the goosebumps.
Life is anime.
Like right in between. What are they gonna do? Oh my god.
So I want to ask you very briefly about the conventions themselves. Like, were you guys convention goers before you started attending as guests?
Yes, my friends and I used to go when I was in high school, and it was like super fun. And back then, it's been so interesting because like my brother and I like grew up watching like the OG Toonami after school, and I didn't know that it was called anime. It was just like, oh, these cartoons are different than what they show on Nickelodeon. And I was like, 9 years old, and it was that really fun thing that we would just do after school, and so then I met some friends that were into some of that stuff, and then we were like, oh, there's like a convention, this is so cool. But it's been interesting to see how the industry has grown and changed, because I remember like, you couldn't really find merchandise for anything. Conventions were like this little niche thing, and we just thought it was like, oh, this is so cool, like, there's nothing else like this around, how neat, and the people are so nice, and they're dressed in like cool costumes, and this is so fun. And now it's just exploded, and it's so accessible, and you can find merchandise from anything and everything, even if it's 30 years old. And it's just, being a nerd is cool now, which is awesome. And it's been really cool to see how it's grown and changed and evolved over the years.
More families are attending.
Yes.
I like
Oh,
seeing
yeah.
that.
Yeah, especially at Comic-Cons, like families get really involved, because it's, it covers everything. So,
Yeah. It does, and they were kids watching old
Yes.
Toonami, and now they're exposing their kids to the shows, and it's affecting them or their grandparents, or vice versa, and that's really neat to see, and especially when they're all cosplaying together.
Yeah, that's so
Families
fun.
doing all that.
I love that.
Because I remember, I don't know if you guys remember, like 20 years ago on the con scene, parents would be like, I don't understand this stuff, I'm just gonna drop you guys off,
Yeah.
you all have fun, I'll pick you up when the sun goes down, or something like that.
Yep.
And now they're seeing parents more so often than not want to get involved, they're genuinely, interested in
Yeah.
getting involved
Yes.
in their kids' hobbies and everything, that's cool.
Yeah, and they're so excited to be like, like if their child is shy or something, to come up and be like, oh my God, they love this show, or like they draw from the show, and like kids are like, or parents are like showing that off, like about their kids, and I love it, it's so wholesome.
I grew up in a little town, and I'd never heard of a convention for this kind of thing
Yeah.
before. So, right, if there was a convention in town, it was usually like a gun show or something. Right? But upon starting up at Funimation 23 years ago, somewhere, I don't know, in the few years after that, they sent me out to one in California, and I was blown away. Anime Expo, I think it was, but it was in Anaheim at that time.
Probably a lot smaller way back then.
Was a lot smaller, and there was like some kind of like a biblical type convention going on like in the same time. So it was like a real weird combo of
Yeah.
things. But that really kind of took me for a ride. I was like, wow, I had no idea this world existed.
One of those big parts of conventions is fans meeting guests. Have you had any like magical moments with any fans that you remember off the top of your head?
There've been so many, gosh.
Yeah, to be sincere, I mean, literally, like, I'm gonna point you out if that's all right, Lucas. But like, Lucas and I meet in Lexington, like almost it was before 2 years ago. And so he comes up today, and I didn't remember his name, but it looked familiar, and he reminded me. And all of these moments are magical, right? I mean, there's not one that's not. So thank you.
That's fun for me too.
Yeah, it's really just sort of like an overarching thing that happens. Like, it's really wonderful to hear like about what these shows mean to people. And there are people that, and I'm sure it's the same for you too as well, like we have people that come up and tell like really personal stories about how, oh, I was going through this thing in my life and I watched this show and this part of it just like really helped me get through a difficult time. And it's easy to kind of get caught up in like, we love what we do, but it is also a job and it's stressful sometimes, and it's easy to kind of get caught up in that grind a little bit. And it's so wonderful to be reminded that like not only are a lot of people watching these shows, but they're really getting something deeply personal from them. And that's so humbling and wonderful, and even just to know that like, wow, at the end of the day, it's like, that is what escapism is. It's giving us all a reprieve from our stress and our troubles and our worries and whatever. And so I love it when people, it's one thing to like think that to yourself, but it's another to like take the time to go up to one of our tables and say, I want to tell you how much this meant to me. And I just always tell people, like, it was so good of you to actually want to come and tell me that and not just think it to yourself. And it's always so meaningful.
It's like a chance to keep this and think of it in big picture terms. You know, when we're recording, we're in the moment. Our job is to give a performance that the director says, all right, that's great, move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Lather, rinse, repeat. And then once it's out there into the universe, with conventions and social media, we now get that feedback from the people. It's like, hey, whether it was just plain entertainment, you made me laugh, I had a good time, or if it's therapy, if it's helped people through rough times and depression and all that. And that's real, again, to use the cliche of icing on the cake. We have a delicious cake, but you guys are the icing. We get to get that feedback, and it's validating on so many levels. You know, yes, we're actors. Please love me, pay attention to me. You know, it's not just that, but it's like, wow, we made a difference in someone's life. That's amazing.
I mean, it is really magical that, like, you know, sometimes you don't realize how important Dragon Ball was to someone. How important, like yesterday, we had the fairy tale panel, same thing. They were like, this changed my life.
Sure.
And it's a really soft feeling. It's really nice.
Yeah.
So I wanted to open the floor one more time. I know we've had a couple more people join us. If you have any questions, please feel comfortable.
Hi, I'm gonna move over where I can actually see you all. So when it comes to performing, do you find that reading ahead, like in the manga or studying the Japanese sub, helps or hinders your performance?
Well, with simuldubs in particular, sometimes it's impossible to watch ahead, depending on like how close the release dates are to each other. But my personal process, I don't ever, unless I absolutely have to for whatever reason, I never read ahead or watch ahead, because I feel, you were kind of touching on it earlier about like, you know, actors being, you know, set on some kind of line read because they've had, you know, rehearsal time, as it were, or you've gone into the material and been like, I made a decision about how I'm going to say that. And when I'm directing, I urge the actors that I cast, like, don't watch ahead, don't read ahead. That's my job. Like, I don't want you, or I'll say like, there's something big that's gonna happen to your character, and like, be prepared. Like, don't have your next session right after you get home from a con or something, or don't have a screamo session for someone else the day after. But please don't read ahead, because I want you to come in just like ready to receive what I'm gonna tell you, and I want you to experience this with your character. And I just find that both as an actor and as a director, that's where the discoveries are made. Like, that's where, and especially if it's something really big or traumatic or sad or whatever, even if it's just something where you're like, oh man, you know, holy crap, it's finally happening. Even if it's happy, it's like those emotions can just really give an amazingly organic, authentic performance. And then a director can just listen to that and go, that was amazing. Okay, let's go in one more time and just go a little farther. And then that's like where the magic happens. And I feel like the best performances, both, you know, on both sides, it's like, I feel like I get the best performances out of actors when they don't read ahead, and then I feel like I do my best work when I don't read ahead. But that's just me. I don't know, some people have a different process, but I feel like that's where the most organic experience happens, which leads to the most compelling nights, in my opinion.
Right, actors will tend to, usually, I think, and I'm guessing to a degree, but like film actors or stage actors, they're memorizing lines. That's why that rehearsed time is going on. VO work, you don't necessarily need to memorize the line, right? You're not on camera, so it's not gonna be a bother with you reading the script there. But yeah, and we're moving really fast, right? 3 takes and we're moving on to the next line, kind of a thing, right? Or ideally. And so yeah, I agree with you 110%. That's where you're gonna get that for that fast, honest reaction, whatever it is that's happening in the scene. It's best not to see it.
Well, and it's fun sometimes too, because every single thing we do, we preview in Japanese first, if it's a localization. And, you know, there will be a thing where, like, you know, the director, we're doing some scene that's really, let's say it's really like tense and dramatic, and it's a big bomb that's dropped or something like that. And it's like, okay, they'll say, okay, we don't have to do all these lines in one go, but I want you to watch this whole scene so you know what's gonna happen. And you know, you're so invested in these characters by that point as the actor, and so you're watching it, and it's just like, oh my God, you see it for the first time, and then the director will be like, go right in. That what you're feeling right now, take that into your read, and then you just immediately go in, and that energy of like, even though you know what's happening, now that you're going in to dub it, that like buzz, that hum is now like sitting in your chest, and it's just, I've seen actors, especially as a director, I've seen actors do absolutely incredible work, like when we do that, and it's just, yeah, it's amazing.
So that buzz, that hum, what's your de-stress after a big day where a lot's happened?
Big, loose, soft clothing, sitting on the couch with a cup of tea and a Disney movie.
Wow. We're here.
Yeah, everybody awake?
again, maybe our
Oh, you got some-
lightsabers crossed, I don't know.
Never cross the streams.
We had Cooper Andrews up here yesterday on the Walking Dead panel. He was giving everyone a Star Wars guide on how to lightsaber duel.
Amazing.
That's
So-
important, but yeah,
Yeah.
de-stressing. I love playing games. I play Call of Duty every night. I'm terrible at it. I'm a button masher type of casual gamer, but I've always loved video games. And I'll listen to podcasts, supernatural, conspiracy theory, aliens, or whatnot, and pop culture type things. And I mute the chat because I don't want to listen to smack talking 12-year-olds. You know, go back and forth and say things they shouldn't be saying. It's like, all right, I'm just gonna go casually shoot people, or get shot in the case because I'm terrible. But that's a good de-stressor, a decompression sort of thing.
Music seems to be kind of my way out, whether it's playing it or listening to it. I'm a big record guy, so I like to sit down in the chair and listen to some records.
What have you been listening to lately?
Oh, you know, I just got, actually, well, Dweezil Zappa. Having fun there. And enjoy that one. Look that up. Dweezil Zappa. It's Frank's kid.
That's an amazing name.
You like that?
I love that.
Dweezil. His brother
Sounds
is
like a
on it, and then his sister was Moon Unit. So Frank
Cool.
had fun with names. Maybe because he was called Frank.
I don't know.
Time to get creative, right?
That's right. Yeah, music is also a good one for me too. I'm back into vinyl, and so that's all an experience. You know, take out the record, put out the needle, and listen to it. Don't skip around like you can on your phone. Listen to it the way the artist intended. Listen to the warmth, and just soak it all in.
Have you been listening to the Zappa family?
It is, I mean, what you're saying, I mean, yes, it slows you down, and that's my favorite part of it.
Yeah.
Everything's so quick, right? Spotify, give me this song, and 80 others that sound like it, that kind of thing, and, or at least that's what I've been told. But, you know, slow down a second, look at some artwork while you're, you know, doing the album cover.
Read the
The liner notes,
The
that's right.
liner notes, yeah.
Speaking of vinyl players, I bought, sorry, this is just a weird thing real quick. I bought, it's so fun, it's a gramophone.
Okay.
Like an old timey, old fashioned big, yep.
Yeah.
But it's just in the image of a gramophone. It's not like a vintage
Okay.
piece of gramophone.
Yeah.
But you can use it as a vinyl player, which I do sometimes, and then you can also use it as like a Bluetooth function.
Oh,
And
speakers.
I got my little like dark academia corner in my apartment, and I love it so much. And so yeah, if I'm not curled up watching Disney movies, I've got that going with like
Nice.
jazz or something. Still wearing very comfy clothes, and like I like a little adult beverage at home or something. So it's nice.
So how big is your vinyl collection, Justin?
It's obsessive. It's hard.
Like library status?
Yeah.
You in every single city you go to.
Just about. Chris and I tried here, but they didn't open till noon on
He
Friday.
always, every single convention he goes to, he tries to find a vinyl record store.
Yeah, head to the record shop.
That's
Pick
his
up
thing.
something fun.
Anything you're hunting for specifically?
I have a whole list of things that I'm hunting for, but I've got that. But the search is my own, right?
It's about the journey, not the destination, right?
We'll just see him like leave the hotel and we're like, he's on a mission. Hopefully he comes back with some goodies. It'll be stuff none of us have heard of, but it makes him happy, and that's great.
What jazz do you listen to?
Honestly, I don't have any like specific artists. I'll just pull up like, jazz playlists
Oh, I
on
gotcha.
YouTube or lo-fi jazz.
Well, I'll give everyone a freebie. Ramsey Lewis. I'd never heard of him until recently, and he's an older artist, but man, it's some magical piano playing.
I also love getting the original recordings of like early 1900s like big band stuff, because I want that grain in there, like the Fats Waller stuff and the what's that guy? He was known for like they rotoscoped him a lot in like Betty Boop cartoons. He kind of like does the cool movements with his body. What is his
He
name?
did the Infirmary Blues.
Yes.
What's his name?
Yes.
It is,
I have it on my shuffle. What is his name? It's terrible. Kaz Calloway? Is that his name?
Cab
Calloway. That's what it is. Yeah. But I want that like old timey, like we can't remaster this because it's so old. Like I want the grain. It's amazing. I love it.
I think we have time for one more question. Anybody got a question?
They-
Right, we'll do two. One more.
So I know, like a lot of times and not all of it translates to English, you know, vice versa. So, like, is there any shows where they've kind of give you, like, creative freedom with your lines and just, like, have fun with it?
Not so much. We really do try to tell the story as it's been told in other languages, right? Because we want to make sure that you guys get to have the same emotional experience that the artist who created the thing intended, right? And sometimes the improvisation can adjust or change that toning in such a way that may, you know, lean you farther away from, you know, maybe what the original intent was.
I think the only exception I can think of to that is Shin Chan.
Here.
But that wasn't like people riffing in the. I mean, there was probably some riffing in the booth, but I think most of it was just the scripts came that way. But that was because the creator of Shin Chan said, like, I want this humor to be something that everyone all over the world can understand in their language. And humor, especially between English and Japanese, doesn't always translate. We have different ideas of like what constitutes as like belly laughter humor, and it doesn't always translate. But he said, he was like, no, I want this to be like indicative of the times, like make fun of celebrities, make fun that are only in, you know, the States, or that only the English speakers would be like, oh, I understand why they're making fun of that person, or whatever. Like, he wanted it to be sort of this time capsule of like a parody of what was going on in pop culture at the time. But he was very specific in that, and I don't think most shows aren't going to allow for something like that. But so like if you watch the Japanese version of Shin Chan and the English version of Shin Chan, it's very different. But that's because there was explicit permission given like for that. So occasionally I think, or like that ADV show, like the ghost stories thing.
Yes.
I heard, don't quote me because I didn't do work for that studio, but I know people who were in that show. And they basically were told that the licensor was like, we don't care, do what you want. And they meant it. So, yeah, occasionally lightning strikes, but yeah.
And our final question, go ahead.
Hi. My question is more for Cal.
Okay.
What was your reaction? What were you doing? How did you react when you kind of found out that Gohan was getting the title role of superhero and he was getting a new form? You kind of found out.
Finally.
You know, in Japanese, or did they tell you like beforehand? Or?
I didn't really get a heads up until I knew that we were going to do the movie, and Chris Sabat said, all right, Gohan finally has an upgrade. I'm like, yes! Well, we've been waiting literally 2 decades plus since he's been nerfed all this time, and you know, his potential's been squandered. You know, he's had little bits of like, look, Gohan's still relevant, you know. But now, yeah, the beast mode, I mean, he's not, I wouldn't say the movie's his by any means. It's a good ensemble piece, honestly. Everyone really shines in that thing. But it's so great to see. I've been saying for years, like, make Gohan great again. And now he's great because he's got this power up that probably is beyond the Super Saiyan fill in the blank or whatever. I think Akira Toriyama always kind of hinted that Gohan was the most powerful character in that universe. So I just hope they continue to roll with that. I had a blast getting to play it, and I had chills in packed theaters multiple times just watching it play out, and oh, it felt so amazing. It felt so good.
Well, Justin, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everybody.